Welcome to Blatantly Honest with Makaila Nichols. This is the first episode of many. We'll see how many, but I have a feeling it'll be a lot. I'm extremely excited to finally get this done, get this going, because I feel like it's been the longest time in the making. And if I had $1 for every time people asked me if I would do a podcast, I was like, oh, me? No, God, I don't think I'll ever do that. But here we are. And I couldn't be more excited. I have been sitting here in front of my computer trying to figure out how the heck to record something because I had zero idea you could even do that. So a lot of trips to Sam Ash for the good old mixers and the audio and the microphones and everything else that comes with it. But here we are and we're ready. And I'm so happy you guys are finally able to join me. So a little bit about me and what led me to this exact moment sitting in my new little podcast studio, just kind of admiring everything. It's been a journey, let me tell you. And the main purpose of this show is really to just kind of talk about the journey that's gotten me to this point, gotten me to sharing my life with you, because I think people need to be more open of sharing their life and making choices and just kind of, not being afraid to be the one that's a little different, not afraid to be bold, be you, and be blatantly honest. We live in a world where sometimes it can seem very hard to do that. And I hope to just kind of change the stigma and, create a conversation that can last for many years. And I think it just takes one person to do that. And I don't think I'm that one person. I think there's other people doing it, but I think I could really be someone to inspire and hopefully help, because that's my goal. My goal is to help people that need help. My goal is to reach out to the misfits. So welcome to episode 1. I really want this show to be something that people can be inspired about. They can look forward to listening to their weekly, maybe more than weekly, maybe daily. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I really think that we need to address the issues that we see on TV. We need to see more stories of overcoming bullying and more stories of the families that lose someone to suicide, or we need to hear from the girl that's struggling with an eating disorder that no one heard from before. We all go through things in our life, and it's what we do with it. It's how we overcome. It's how we fight. Because at the end of the day, life is a bunch of struggles, but it's also the most beautiful gift. And I think each and every one of us is here for a purpose. And I don't want to get all biblical on you. I really don't. But just everything I've been through has just really kind of made me someone who appreciates everyone. I really kind of take a look at someone and I'm like, wow, you know what? You've been through a lot and you've overcame so much. And I think people forget just what they're capable of. So I really hope this show kind of focuses on, people and what they can do and the power they have, because I think other people really need to realize theirs. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my first guest, myself. And, I know that people usually have a first guest and it's like a really big deal, but I thought, for some of you listening, you might not know who I am. And that's totally okay because, I probably wouldn't know who I was either. I'm just, someone who's trying to make a difference. But I'd really like to introduce someone to you, and she's a very great, good friend of mine, and her name is Makaila. And Makaila's 21 years old, and she's a current student at the University of Central Florida, and she's a best-selling author and a speaker, and she's doing a podcast now, and she has some children's books coming out and a clothing line, but that's not really Makaila. She came from somewhere else, and she came from her experiences. And I'd like to talk to her about her experiences that led her right here. Because honestly, between you and I think that's the main reason why she's here today. It's not because of her past successes and everything. It's all the bad things, all the shitty things that have happened to her. But what she chose to do to change it, to not let the worst things get to her and to let her just blossom from her darkest of days. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you my best friend and myself, Makaila Nichols. Thanks, Makaila. I'd love to thank you for having me on. I It's an honor to be here, an honor to share your first episode with you. Thanks. You're one of my main favorite people, so I figured, why not interview you? The audience and tell everyone a little bit of a history about you. Just, not aside from the modeling and all this stuff, just like you as a person. Great, I'd love to do that. So originally I'm from Buffalo, New York. I grew up there. I didn't really live there too long, but I'll always consider it my home, mainly because of the people. And I would love to be, honored as a person that's from Buffalo, because I truly believe that the best people come from Buffalo. So that'll always be my hometown. But I grew up in Orlando. I went to a school in Windermere, Florida, and I'm an only child, and I live with my two loving, wonderful parents, Cheryl and Steve, and we had a beautiful dog named Breezy. But Breezy passed away, and it was kind of like, having my sister or brother taken from me. So that's the gist of my family. But I grew up in a very small, family-oriented, good old, I wouldn't say Christian, but Catholic family. We're not the best ones, but it's a little bit about me. So in my family, and we're extremely close. And, they've really kind of helped me get through the most difficult of my life situations, and from the stuff I'll talk about in a little bit, from the bullying to the body image and the eating disorders and the sexual assault and thoughts of suicide, it was my family. It was honestly, truthfully, my family that got me through everything. And I'm so extremely grateful, thankful for them. So as far as modeling goes, Makaila, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know so many people find that interesting. It's funny you should ask. I was originally walking through a mall in good old Orlando, Florida, called the Mall at Millennia, and I was in Macy's, of all places, looking for a communion dress, or maybe it was confirmation, whichever one you're older, for my good friend Kate at the time. And this bald man came up to me, and he was like, hey, have you ever wanted to be a model? And I was like, oh, no, sir, like, you're kind of creepy, bye. And he was like, no, but seriously, like, you want to take my business card? And I was like, no, like, I don't think I want to do that. And lo and behold, he's like, well, please, I'll leave you alone if you just take my business card. I'm like, all right, sure, whatever. So I thought nothing of it. I went home that night and, went about my day and brought it up to my parents casually, like, hey, mom, dad, this, like, weird dude, like, this, like, bald guy named Keith, like, came up to me, and he was all like, hey, do you want to be a model? And I was like, no, because you never know. I think that's something that girls, I go off on a tangent sometimes, but I think that's something that girls really need to be aware of, is just like, if someone comes up to you and asks if you want to be a model, number one, run away. Two, maybe if they are a scout, like, at least take their business card, like, do them a favor, because they may be legit, like, you never know. But sometimes, you can be in one of those scary situations and you might not necessarily know what to do. So, get yourself out of that situation. But anyway, I went home that night and we were talking about it at the business table, LOL, dinner table. And my dad was like, oh, like, that's cool. Like, let me look into this guy. Turns out the guy was from good old Buffalo, New York, where the good people are. So God forbid he was a bad person. He wasn't. He's a really great guy who has a really great program for those who want to get in the fashion industry. It's called Fox Models. I'll give him a little shout out for that. But anyway, he turned out to be legit. And I went to one of their, casting calls or one of the showcases, and I got selected by, I think it was like 12, maybe 10. I don't want to like overshoot myself. Better to undershoot, right? But I got a bunch of callbacks from all these different agencies, and I was honestly not much of a person you would ever think would model. I hung out with the boys, did boy things, like to, go out and climb trees and like fake shoot and all this kind of stuff. And there I was with all these callback cards in my hands. And I ended up signing with a really reputable agency called Wilhelmina Models. And I was one of the youngest people on their board, actually, at their time. And it was a true blessing to be there. And I'm so, so, so grateful for my experiences there. But I learned a lot. about who I am and who I was because of that experience. So how old were you, Makaila, when you signed with Wilhelmina? So I was 14 years old, like fresh off 14. I think I went down to Miami when I was a freshman in high school, maybe. It was on my spring break, and I vividly remember when we got there, and it was during the Ultra Music Festival. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. I've never been to it. Hint, hint, wink, wink, kind of want to go. But it was in Miami, and I remember my parents just freaking out about the parking and everything and the traffic, yada, yada, yada. But I was 14 when I went down to Miami for the first time. So how was your experience with that? It's kind of a trivial question. And, one that I don't want to fully blame Wilhelmina for. I really loved every opportunity that I was given. But I also kind of lost sight of who I was because 14-year-old Makaila didn't know who she was. She was a kid that grew up playing volleyball and wanting to work out and be big and be strong, and that wasn't what the modeling world wanted. They wanted someone who would, change her hair color. I mean, that was the first time when my hair almost went brown, and I don't even know what hair color I have now, but they were like, yeah, maybe she should be brunette. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's fun. I've never had my hair dyed before. But, I think there's something to be said about the modeling industry. Sometimes they want to change someone, and other times they don't. And I don't want to attack it because, it's really kind of given me the platform to where I was today. And I'm extremely thankful for the people I worked with and for the people that kind of molded me into something. But I'm not going to lie, it did a lot of damage. I think me modeling kind of really changed my view on a lot of things, especially myself. And now at 21 years old, I sometimes look at myself when I was that young and I say, man, I wish I looked like her. I wish I was that skinny again. I've gone to one too many Taco Tuesdays to look how I looked. But you know what? That's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. Modeling is great. If you want to put yourself out there and get exposure and travel and do all these amazing things. But it's so important to never lose sight of yourself. And I think I was so young that I lost sight of myself. But I think that needs to change. I just think that body image issues and anorexia and bulimia and all this stuff is just so relevant because you know what? I experienced anorexia. I experienced bulimia and, I overcame them. And not a lot of people can say that they have. And when they can, well, God bless them because that is not easy to do. Can you tell me a little bit about bullying for our lovely audience here? I was always awkward. I was tall and lanky and, I don't know, just kind of different. But it was the kind of different that I wanted to be. I used to wear blue feathers in my hair, and I had braces not once but twice, and glasses that were a little bit too big for my face. Tall, and my clothes were a little smaller than others, so it looked like I always tried too hard, but the truth is, I'm just 5'11", I'm a giant. I just, it was something that it was just so minimal, but it meant so much, and I was blessed, and I am blessed to, be in a family that supports me and loves me so much, where they took me to, first row concerts or courtside seats, and it wasn't just because my dad worked hard, but it was just because, people we had met along the way, and I would be so excited to go to school the next day and be like, oh my God, look who signed my arm or something, but kind of came off as bragocious and made other kids insecure and all that kind of stuff. So the bullying started when I was young. It really started then, and I was kind of isolated, and they'd be like, oh, you do this with your nails when you're mad or when you're doing this, and then it became more as I got older and started modeling, oh, hey, Makaila, you going to drink your cayenne pepper water today? Or are you going to eat anything? I remember vividly one time, actually, this is horrible. Again, I won't say the school that I went to just for, I don't know. anything. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. But I was on a Grand Canyon trip, and it was so exciting. If you ever get to go to the Grand Canyon, it's the most beautiful thing. A little scary on the, like, we're trying to walk down a little bit. It's, if you fall, ain't nothing gonna catch you. But I remember one night, it was just before I went down to the Miami Ultra Festival, as I like to call it, and I was very concerned about my weight, which I look back on it, and you know what, I should have loved my body as is, but I didn't. So lo and behold, I was pulled out of my room that night by my teachers, and I was called disgusting and skinny and anorexic, and it really hurt, because this time I wasn't just bullied by my, fellow peers. It was by people, my teachers, who I looked up to, and really bothers my heart saying this, but it's the truth. And again, I won't say names, and I won't say what school, and I won't say any of that, because I don't think that matters. I think it matters to all people, regardless of who you are, what you do, what you're saying, because the words you say to someone, believe it or not, they matter. They truthfully matter, because years later, I remember that. I remember being stabbed in the back by my two very best friends. And they know who they are, because if they hear this, which I don't think they will, but, it doesn't leave a person how you treat someone else. And I think that, I think that needs to be more addressed. And, as I've touched on my bullying and my body image, I also went through something else. So when I was still in school, I dealt with something else, and it was sexual assault. It's a very touchy topic, but it's a very real topic, because, you turn on the news and you see people that are attacked every day, and you see these stories of people coming out of the woodwork. It's not easy to talk about your attacker. It's not easy to want to relive those moments. God knows I hid it from my parents for years until they found out eventually. But, I won't get into it because I don't want this episode, my first episode, to be this downer. But I just want anyone listening to know that you're not alone. This world might be big and scary, but everyone goes through something. And I plan to talk about these somethings, and I plan to show how strong, how enlightened, how much growth you can go through because of these things. And people forget that, and I don't want you to forget that, because I almost forgot that, and I almost, ended up somewhere. Nothing. And I don't want that for you. And I'll never want that for you. And it's weird talking to myself because, I was so in those thoughts so long ago. I was so dark in my head. But as I sit here in my little podcast studio and I look at little 14-year-old Makaila wearing might be a Beatle shirt with some wedges and yellow socks and jeans and the most innocent look on her face, and what she was going through then, I just want to give her a hug. But I also want to pat her on the back, because you know what? She was tough enough and she was strong enough to overcome her darkest of days. And anyone out there listening, you can too. Because years from now, find a picture, find something, or go back to when you were struggling and find a picture of you and look at you and realize that that's still you, except you know what? You're still here because you fought, you grew. You should be proud of yourself. So enough the Debbie Downer stuff. I will save that for another day. How did I get here? Well, I think you know a little bit of how I got here into this podcast and how, I wrote a book and stuff, but I'm here because I want to help you. I'm here because I think we all need to listen to something relatable. I think social media has kind of changed our views of, being relatable, being able to be connected as it was supposed to do. But it doesn't, because people are so afraid to, not show their true selves, to not add the filter, not do the Photoshop, not add a million hashtags of random things that don't even make sense to their photos. I think we just really need to be really real for a second. And really just kind of, think a little bit of, who do I want to be and how can I be that person? So, Makaila, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask myself a question. What made you write your book, Blatantly Honest, Normal Teen, Abnormal Life? I've been asked that question a million times, it feels like. Not actually. That'd be really cool if it was. But every time someone asks me that question, I smile and say the idea came to me in the shower. And it's true. It really did. I was there one day and I, looked up and realized I needed to do more with my life. And I'm trying to. If you would have asked me when I was young, Makaila, would you write a book? My answer probably would have been, God, no, I hate reading. True story. But I think our lives all work in mysterious ways. My book was the first step of me embracing my past, of me really, truly growing and learning from who I was and all my experiences. And it was therapeutic and it taught me so much. All right, Makaila, so what about these 2 new children's coloring books? Funny story, when I wrote my first book, I realized that I was targeting preteens, teens, young adults, and even their parents. I said, hey, whoa, we missed a key demographic. That's children. I hate to say it, but we turn on the news every single day and we see bullying happening to children who are 5 or 6. And some of these kids even end up taking their own life. And that needs to stop. It needs to stop no matter what age you are, but kids? Come on. I know we're all different. We're all different colors, different, genders, different everything. We all look different sizes, different eyes, different hair. If we picked each other apart for every tiny little detail, well, honey, you're going to spend your whole life doing that. The children need to be kids. And I think that from, making children's coloring books, which coloring, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I even color. There's a children or adult, look at me call myself a kid, adult children's coloring books. Coloring, that's so therapeutic. It helps you unwind. It helps you relax. Well, why don't we teach the kids something? Why don't we teach them how to be nice, how to stand up for the kid that needs a friend, but also letting them color to teach therapy, to draw the kids however they want, to add the colors, to add the glasses, to teach inclusion of your neighbor in a wheelchair, accept one another. I think prevention starts with the kids. I honestly believe this, and I really want Blatantly Honest to be someone and something that can reach kids and students and everyone of all ages. So yeah, that's how I got here. And one more side note, I have a little clothing line coming up with some awesome motivational quotes from my friends and people whom I love dearly. Little positive, reminders. Just to be you, to be comfortable, to love yourself always. People need to be reminded, as my hero, Ellen DeGeneres, would say. We need to just be kind to one another and just be gracious and understanding. So that's how I got here. From my humble beginnings of Buffalo to Orlando to going to school in Windermere and, struggling with bullying and body image and assault and all that stuff. So I am humbled and I am extremely privileged to have been my first guest on this show. Now I can promise you something. This show isn't going to be rainbows and butterflies and sunshine at all points, because I think people need to be heard. I think their struggles need to be heard. But what I can tell you is I will never end on a negative note, because as Annie would say, the sun will always come out tomorrow. You just have to believe, and everything will get better, and everything is meant to be how it will be. But you know what? That's the reality of it. Everything that happens to us changes us, but how we react says a lot about who we are. So hopefully you enjoyed this first episode, hopefully you understand a little bit about who I am. Because this is just the beginning. I plan to have on guests from celebrities to experts to doctors to influencers to you name it, I'll probably want to talk to it. I want to hear everyone's struggles. But more importantly, I want to hear how they overcame them and made it into a positive. And do yourself a favor. Be bold, be you, and be blatantly honest.